Cenk, you're a natural born athlete.
Woo!
Welcome to TYT on a Wednesday, usually anchored solo, going strong, Anna Kasparian, who is on a well-deserved vacation. So here you have me, Francesca Fiorentini, and there you have Wosny Lambre. Big Woz, how are you?
I'm fantastic.
Good, I'm glad. You sort of froze for me, so we'll check in on that for half a second. But otherwise, I think we have a lot of news to get to. Some updates on Texas basically trying to
beyond, man. Kate reached out. It said my internet was unstable.
Is everyone's good? Everything's good? All right, cool. Okay, cool. Texas is basically trying to do its own damn thing. They're like, oh yeah, federal immigration law, screw that. We're gonna go our own way. So that's being litigated currently and going through the courts. A good day if you believe in police accountability, but we'll get into the details out of Mississippi. And they are chilling and discuss them, as well as the origin story of Alina Habba, which, yes, has to do with a hush money payment for Donald J. Trump. Not directly involving him, but adjacent. So it is a juicy first hour. In the second hour, Cenk is gonna be there with Jordan Ewell. So do not fret, some good and familiar faces, but in addition to our faces. So of course, you know what to do, send in your super chats, and we will be reading them throughout the show. But Woz, are you good? Are we todo bien? All right, cool.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back. We're ready to go.
Okay, all right, let's do this. Let's start here. A Texas law that would effectively defy federal immigration law and deputize all Texas local and state authorities to effectively round up and deport anyone they think is undocumented hangs in the balance today. Hours after the Supreme Court's conservative majority allowed it to go into effect, a federal appeals court has now put it back on hold where it had been. This law is known as SB 4. It passed last year but was placed on hold by a Texas judge who said, this is probably unconstitutional. Not really sure you can do this. Remember how there's a Customs and Border Patrol that does this just generally for Texas. However, the state did appeal that. So what is SB 4 more specifically? As I mentioned up top, it basically makes it a state crime for migrants to enter Texas illegally. Now, crossing the US-Mexico border is already a crime, but okay, Governor Greg Abbott wants to slap more on top of that. The measure imposes state criminal penalties up to 6 months in jail on non-citizens who illegally enter Texas from Mexico. Anyone accused of re-entering the country illegally could face felony charges and a 10 to 20-year sentence. Lawmakers also empowered state judges to order deportations to Mexico without Mexico's consent, which seems important, but whatever, Texas, and allowed local law enforcement personnel to carry out those orders. There's a little bit more on that. Mexico has something to say. But again, yesterday, the conservative Supreme Court rejected this emergency application from actually the Biden administration to hold this law, and it said, no, it can go into effect. But then the Fifth Circuit US Court of Appeals put the law back on hold today as they hear oral arguments, which they began hearing today. The Supreme Court's conservative majority didn't explain why they wanted the law to go into effect. In fact, they did not rule on the constitutionality of this law whatsoever, but they just, said, hey, why not? Well, later, we'll do that later. Liberal justices, however, did write a dissenting opinion. Justice Sotomayor wrote, the court gives a green light to a law that will upend the longstanding federal-state balance of power and sow chaos. Yeah, I would agree with that, and I'll explain why. But here was the Biden administration's and some Democrats' response to that minority ruling.
The Biden administration argues the law would make Texas less safe and will burden law enforcement. And it argues the law infringes on the federal government's authority over immigration.
We know for about 100 years, the states haven't been engaged in this kind of policy, no more than they have been in printing and coining currency. But if you let the states into this area, you open up a Pandora's box, and not just in immigration.
Absolutely, it is a Pandora's box, and especially because there are other states like Iowa who are seeking to enact their own similar legislation, which effectively says, yeah, our state law enforcement can deport and detain those who we believe to be illegally in this country and override whatever Customs and Border Patrol is doing. Again, this is all part of the idea that Customs and Border Patrol somehow doesn't have enough money, even though they have one of the biggest budgets, if not the biggest budget of the federal government. What else does this throw into disarray and chaos? It's a lot of logistical stuff. If every state is enacting its own immigration policy, yeah, a little bit of confusion there. It's unclear, this is from AP, where any migrants ordered to leave might go if the law is ultimately allowed. It calls for them to be sent to ports of entry along the US-Mexico border, even if they're not Mexican citizens. Yeah, why? I mean, I guess that's irrelevant if your main goal is xenophobia. However, Mexico had something to say about it. Mexico's government said Tuesday it would not, under any circumstances, accept the return of any migrants to its territory from the state of Texas. Mexico is not required to accept deportations of anyone except Mexican citizens. On top of that, even Texas law enforcement is like, I'm not sure. I don't think this is a good idea. Sheriff Eddie Guerra of Hidalgo County says a lot of local police chiefs here, we don't believe it will survive the constitutional challenge. We have no training whatsoever to determine whether an individual is here in this country legally. But Sheriff Hidalgo, I think you know this maybe better than most people in this country, but we all see what Governor Greg Abbott is doing here. We all see the point of this. It is not to suss out whether someone is here legally or not. This is an effective bounty on anyone who appears to be brown. Just an immigrant, doesn't matter. They could be black, they could be Asian. Like, it does not matter. This is effectively a stop and frisk for immigrants broadly. And again, this extends the jurisdiction of what the CBP usually has into wherever in the state. And so it is just a mind F, if I may say so. And again, now it is on hold. Here we have a sheriff saying, I think the Supreme Court will probably declare it unconstitutional, but who knows? And once this happens, or if it happens, like I said, other states may follow suit. But Waz, what do you make of this? It's as if we think again, CBP doesn't have enough drones and AI doing its work for it.
I think Governor Abbott is running a play from the Ron DeSantis playbook, which is, be as messy and as sledgehammery as you can with these wedge issues that he knows that, quite honestly, the base of his voters are all for. The concept or the idea that, we're quote unquote stopping the rapid flow of people they're calling illegal migrants into the country, which is, it's an obvious dodge. I think the problem is that we don't have a system for processing and, sort of hearing actual legitimate cases of people coming here seeking asylum, seeking visas, seeking work permits, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of dealing with an infrastructural issue that we have for processing folks and dealing with them and letting the requisite people in, it makes a lot of sense to just take a sledgehammer, legislatively anyway, if not in actual practice, and be like, oh, I'm doing something to quote unquote stem the tide.
Right, exactly. And I mean, this all politically takes place in within a framework of discussion that I disagree with, but let's just go with that because this is the politics we've been given. But if Greg Abbott is trying to stick it to Joe Biden and say that Biden isn't doing enough to protect the border, in fact, Joe Biden wanted to pass this bipartisan border bill that, yeah, was sponsored by Republicans and agreed upon by Democrats and does a lot of things that I personally, as a progressive, think are totally abhorrent. And a lot of immigrant rights organizations have said you can't just shut down the border when the crossings reach a certain number a day. But they balked on that. They decided not to pass that. So who is Greg Abbott sticking this to? Who are the ones who are dragging their feet through the mud? It's Republicans, not Democrats. Democrats, again, way too eager to get in bed with Republicans on doing something probably not good for all of us. And here you have this. And like the idea, again, that law enforcement are now going to be CBP officers, that all police, sheriff's departments, who knows, are going to be CBP officers is, I mean, terrifying if you're a Texan, but also, like this one Sheriff Hidalgo explained, mind-boggling in terms of what that even looks like. I can only imagine the private detention companies that are licking their chops at the idea that there would be mass sweeps. But then again, we all know that like if Donald Trump gets reelected, that's what he wants to do, mass sweeps. And I guess he's going to need agents to do that. Remember, by the way, CBP has 100 miles of operating room from the border, meaning they can stop and arrest you and question you about your papers 100 miles from the US-Mexico border, wild. Again, the law is still on hold, but we will see. It'll likely be back at the Supreme Court. Any final thoughts, Waz, about this? I mean, it truly is like a hey, don't mess with Texas / we're gonna secede from the union.
Yeah, it has that tinge of sort of outlaw justice, if you will, of these guys taking matters into their own hands. But again, this issue was a little bit bigger than just Texas and the border itself. Because again, these migrants find their ways to other American cities, places like Chicago, places like New York City, which are Democratic strongholds, Democratic Party strongholds. Eric Adams is talking about, hey, look, we don't know if we can handle any more migrants. And I think Eric Adams is a bit of a lunkhead, but the truth is New York City doesn't actually have an adequate, again, infrastructure to receive these folks and give them a fair shot at figuring out how they go about obtaining their legal documentation and becoming full citizens of this country. And so in the meantime, it becomes essentially a free-for-all, especially in places like New York, which again, some of the worst housing issues in America are happening in New York City right now. And so, yeah, the thing is a mess from the rooter to the tutor.
It really is, and like deterrence is not the way. I mean, deterrence, again, just rounding people up and deporting them or making the border even more militarized, in my opinion, is absolutely not the solution. But you're totally right. Processing people, allowing people to return. Part of the reason that folks don't leave is because they're afraid they will never be able to return to potentially work again. People would leave. You would see fewer crossings if that were possible, to say nothing of US foreign policy in places like Haiti, which is currently in shambles and in rampant gang violence, as Haitians desperately try to leave and then are summarily turned away to either meet, death or again, or worse. So it's just, again, it is totally rotten. No one's actually addressing root causes here. But let's move on. Hey, speaking of rotten, the sheriff's department in Mississippi. Let's begin with this.
The day of justice has finally come.
That's right.
For the Rankin County Goon Squad.
The Goon Squad. A nickname federal prosecutors say some white former Mississippi law enforcement officers gave themselves for their alleged willingness to use excessive force and not report. Now 6 of them facing sentencing after pleading guilty to charges in connection with torturing 2 black men, Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker, for nearly 2 hours back in January of 2023.
That's right, 3 out of 6 sheriff deputies in Mississippi were finally sentenced after decades of terrorizing the citizens of Rankin County. The straw that seemed to break the back of the camel, I messed that up, you know what I'm saying, was that effective torture of victims Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker, who were staying with a woman whom Parker was helping to take care of, when a neighbor reported that several black men were at a white woman's house, and that was suspicious. So 6 officers, all of whom were white, went to that home despite having no probable cause to do so. And according to CNN and the accounts of those victims, for almost 2 hours, a squad of white Mississippi law enforcement officers raided a home without warrants, subjected Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker to racist vitriol, tased them after they'd already been handcuffed, beat them with various objects, and then shot Jenkins in the mouth, leaving him to bleed as they planted a gun on the victims and plotted their cover story. Cute, wonderful. Other things they did were force them to strip naked, intimidated them with warning shots, and forced them to be part of a mock execution. So the most terrifying 2 hours of anyone's any life imaginable. Those 6 officers did get hefty sentences, but there's more. They are Hunter Elward, Christian Dedman, Brett McAlpin, Jeffrey Middleton, Daniel Updike, and Richland police officer Joshua Hatfield. 3 of them, Edlin, Middleton, and Updike, were part of that goon squad. They named themselves the goon squad, and what did the goon squad do? They absolutely tortured citizens for nearly 2 decades. 2 decades. Deputies in the Rankin County Sheriff's Department, many of whom called themselves the Goon Squad, would barge into homes in the middle of the night, handcuff people, torture them for information or confessions. In the pursuit of drug arrests, the deputies rammed a stick down one man's throat until he vomited, dripped molten metal onto another man's skin, and held people down and beat them until they were bloody and bruised, according to dozens of people who said they had witnessed or experienced the raids. In fact, many of those people who experienced the raids in these 2 decades had contacted Sheriff Brian Bailey of Rankin County to complain, only to be ignored. But then it had to be Jenkins and Parker who finally filed a civil rights lawsuit last June for everyone to be taken seriously and to get these guilty pleas. Before I kick it to you, Waz, this is good news. There's actual hefty sentences. The FBI director has called this atrocious and an act of pure hell. Yeah, I'd say, but take a look.
The courtroom filled with emotion at sentencing today. Michael Jenkins' mother, Mary Jenkins, giving a victim impact statement in court, saying in part, "I want the same consideration for these people as they gave my son when they put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger." And the parents of one of the convicted deputies, Hunter Elward, also making a statement. "Nothing prepares a parent for this. What happened shouldn't have happened. There are so many more victims than the people in this room. Hunter is going to take and own what he did." And his son did. Hunter Elward stood up and directly addressed the 2 men he victimized. "I'm so sorry. I don't want to get too personal with you, Michael. There's no telling what you've seen. I'm so sorry that I caused that. I hate myself for it. I hate that I gave you that. I accept all responsibility."
That's not something you hear every day from a sheriff. That was Hunter Elward, 31 years old, sentenced to 20 years in by a federal court. Jeffrey Middleton, 46-year-old former sheriff's deputy whom federal prosecutors described as the ringleader of that goon squad. He was sentenced to more than 17 and a half years on Tuesday. They're also ordered to pay $79,500 in restitution to the victims. Updike was sentenced to 17 and a half years, and Christian Dedman was sentenced to 40 years, the maximum sentence for that torture of Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker. Dedman apparently participated in what was countless missions. I don't know if I would call them missions, and was, quote, not afraid to use excessive force. Despite his relatively young age, one prosecutor said Dedman had the experience not to do what he was doing. He hid behind his badge and gun, and his acts are egregious, serious, and lawless. Yeah, again, the sheriff still in office, but was 3 of 6 were sentenced. I can't imagine the terror that those 2 gentlemen went through.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta say that's pretty good news. That's nothing to sneeze at. Generally, cops get slapped on the wrist for this type of behavior They might get fired, they might lose a pension, but rarely do we ever see these guys get thrown in the pokey for this sort of abhorrent behavior. And honestly, it flows from the top. Like I'm glad these guys got pinched and are going to pay the price, but they're betters than their superiors for fostering an atmosphere and a culture where police officers thought it was appropriate to behave in this fashion is insane. And honestly, this is another thing, especially in places like Mississippi, where a lot of the power goes unchecked, right? There is only one party rule for that, right? Like these people act with an impunity in these communities. There is no check on the actual power. And we know that unchecked power tends to be as corrupt as it gets. So it's no surprising that they brazenly would call themselves a goon squad, right? Yeah. Like that would be their known name for themselves. Essentially calling themselves criminals, people that are going out to commit crimes against the citizenry. It's a miracle, honestly, that these guys got caught and are getting their just due in terms of a prison sentence, public ridicule. And I want to give a shout out to that guy's dad for not coming out and doing the typical thing that we see where the parents come out and act like Johnny was just the perfect little boy his whole life, and they just can't believe he did this. The dad came out and said, what this guy did was horrible. I can't believe my son would do this, and he deserves to pay the price.
Yeah, and we're hearing that actually a fourth has been sentenced of the 6, so that's good. I mean, it also should be a signal to other sheriff's departments around this country. I live in LA, and we know that sheriff's department here in LA County has gangs in it. Just gangs, just all like that relish in torturing people, in killing people, get tattoos when they do so, and celebrate that kind of violence. And we're just supposed to be like, yep, yep, sheriffs and law enforcement, they protect us, things are good. No, man, crime is at an all-time low. They are bored. Are they bored? Is that what's happening right now? Do we need to move funds out of police and sheriff departments? Is that what's happening? But again, like, nobody raises their kid to do something like this, to torture someone, to put a gun in their mouth, to put a stick in their mouth and pour molten lava on their skin. It is the culture of policing that is above, that is completely impugned, right? Like it's completely above the law. They think they are the law so they can get away with violating the law. That is what it is. And so like, we don't have enough checks on them, and we celebrate shooting first and asking questions later. And also, it should not be lost on anyone, the race dynamics here. 6 white men in this predominant, I mean, I can only imagine the goon squad. You gotta be white to be part of it, but who knows? And also like the origins of policing in general. Hello. But we gotta take our first break, if I'm not mistaken. Just wanted to rhyme. But we'll be back. There's more news. Alina Habba's origin story, and yes, and billionaires. Will they come to Donald Trump's rescue? We'll find out. Welcome to the social break on TYT. Trump's Lady Lumps member says it's the wonderful Wizard of Woz Wednesday. Franny, you dope too. Thank you. And yes, I like the wonderful Wizard of Woz. I've never heard that before. 36 Chambers Dragon, or Mountain Dragon, says, hey TYT fam, I will miss the Anna Power Hour, but so glad to have the double dose of wonderful and beautiful Franny, thank you. Also love having great big Waz on the main show as well. Such a great contribution to TYT on a Wednesday. Woke Bros is the ish. Woke Bros, every Thursday? What day are we releasing Waz?
Fridays. Every
Fridays.
Friday. We drop those, yeah.
Friday with Nando Vila?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Let's go. Okay, good. Good. Art Guy, what a bunch of monsters. They deserve everything that's coming to them. Yeah, that is exactly right. And the like just start it over. Level it and rebuild. This is like a house where like a horrible crime has been committed. That's what we do. Or like a haunted house. That's what you do. Art Guy, Mr. Arrogant, sorry, I'm afraid I can't believe anything these days. I believe most of what I hear in this place, but not all of it, most half of it, and that's pretty good. That is good. Believe half of it. Read many different things. Always double check your sources. Read a variety of news outlets. Good for your, media diet. Thank you so much over on Twitch. Purple, I cannot, there are no consonants in this name, so I apologize. You're purple, sorry. 17 months strong, thank you so much. 17 months, whoop, whoop. But I've been watching since 2007 when I was pregnant with my 17-year-old daughter. Nice, very nice. That's a great thing to do while pregnant is get hooked on TYT. So you're like, I'm tired, my ankles are swollen. I gotta get up in the middle of the night once the baby's born and nurse TYT. Dave Schmidt, thank you so much for gifting 4 tier 1 subs, woo! Gifting a total of 1,140. No big deal. Daisy Dragon gifted 5 tier 1 subs to TYT's community, 410 strong. Thank you so much. And BT Dubs, if you came out to see me and Matt Lieb in Sacramento, thank you. That was so fun on Sunday night. We had a great show. Shout out to Sac and the TYT family there. A lot of TYT sweatshirts, a lot of Dragon Squad folks. Thank you so much. It was an adorable time. And also, listen to the Bituation Room. What are you doing? That's my podcast. It's on the TYT network. It's also a YouTube and Twitch show, youtube.com/FrannyFio, FRANIFIO. Oh yeah, Patreon, let's go. Patreon.com/Bituation Room. Support my work. Support my work. All right, there's a lot of news to come after this. Welcome back to TYT. Francesca Fiorentini, Wozni Lambre. A lot to get to. Rarely do we actually hear from lawmakers who are about to have an abortion. We're often hearing from citizens who are getting their rights taken away. But in this case, no, a state senator, take a look.
I don't know how many of you know this, but a few weeks ago I learned that against all odds, I am pregnant. Now, I wish I could tell you otherwise, but after numerous ultrasounds and blood draws, we have determined that my pregnancy is once again not progressing and is not viable. And once again, I have scheduled an appointment to terminate my pregnancy.
So that woman is Arizona State Senator Ava Birch, who announced to her colleagues, as you can see, that because her pregnancy isn't viable, she is planning to get an abortion. She said that in her speech on the Senate floor, despite knowing that her pregnancy is likely to result in a miscarriage. This is, as she explains, the safest way. She hasn't yet gotten that abortion because of the draconian anti-abortion laws in the state. There is about a 15-week, there's a 15-week ban on abortion in Arizona. She's still within her window. She's 8 weeks pregnant, but there's a lot of hoops she has to jump through before she gets that abortion. Take a listen.
First, I was required to have another ultrasound at the abortion clinic, as all patients seeking abortion are required to do in Arizona. An ultrasound that I absolutely did not need to have. I didn't have an ultrasound because my doctor thought I needed one. I had one because legislation has forced me to do that. An invasive transvaginal ultrasound that I didn't want or need to have, performed by someone who didn't want to have to do it. Then I got to sit through an exhaustive list of absolute disinformation that was read off to me. I was told that there were alternatives to abortion, parenting or adoption among them, as if delivering a healthy baby is an option for me. It is not. And from where I sat, the only reason I had to hear those things was in a cruel and really uninformed attempt by outside forces to shame and coerce and frighten me into making a different decision other than the one that I knew was right for me.
Now, why is Ava Birch, Senator Ava Birch, explaining what's going on with her? Why is any of this relevant? Well, that's because women's reproductive rights and right to an abortion are being taken away. And in fact, in Arizona, which again already has this 15-week abortion ban, there's another law that it forbids abortions for the sole reason of genetic fetal abnormality. And it's still in effect, and it's pending, and pending the outcome of an appeal to block it. Again, so it went through, but there's an appeal. So the Arizona Supreme Court is weighing whether to reinstate a near total ban from the year 1864 that would prohibit all abortions except those to save the patient's life and punish doctors who violate that rule with a mandatory 2 to 5 year sentence in prison. So, she's speaking about her fetal abnormality. When the baby does not grow, when you see week to week, there's no growth, there's something wrong. You don't know why exactly 8 weeks is super, super early, but you know there's something wrong. This law, if the appeal doesn't go through, would make it illegal for her to get that abortion even at 8 weeks. That's why she's speaking out about it, and she explains more here.
I don't think people should have to justify their abortions, but I'm choosing to talk about why I made this decision because I want us to be able to have meaningful conversations about the reality of how the work that we do in this body impacts people in the real world. I don't know how many of you have been unfortunate enough to experience a miscarriage before, but I am not interested in going through it unnecessarily. And right now, the safest and most appropriate treatment for me and the treatment that I choose is abortion. But the laws that this legislature has passed has interfered with my ability to do that, along with countless others.
Exactly. So, and there's a few choice words in there. One of them being, this is what I choose. This is what I choose. It is also the safest, and I don't want to have a miscarriage. What so many women in states like Arizona and red states across this country are being forced to do is wait until they have a miscarriage. And even then, as they are miscarrying or as they are bleeding, they are not able to get abortion care in order to ease that process. And even then, if they have the abortion, or if they have the miscarriage, excuse me, they might be accused of having something to do with it, of mishandling remains, as we saw not too long ago. If they have a miscarriage in a toilet, I mean, it goes on and on and on. But while she's being very, very handholdy, right? She is trying to explain as calmly as she can that this affects everyday people, not just state senators, obviously. She just happens to be one. And can you just empathize with this very human experience? Before I get to you, all the Republicans left while she was speaking. All but one left during her comments. Imagine walking out on someone talking about that.
It's not
insane.
Really that hard to imagine because the backbone of this law, it's fake empathy for quote unquote the unborn, and just a blatant disregard for the safety, the health, and the well-being of these pregnant women. There's just no two ways about it. I know we spend a lot of time critiquing Joe Biden and the job that he's done campaigning for himself, proving that he should get to run another term for presidency. But guess what, man? I think he's got a good chance, as good a chance as anyone that the Democrats could throw out there. simply because the Republicans will refuse to stop stepping all over themselves. They will step in it at every single turn. Nobody actually wanted this abortion ban. There's a minority of people in this country, and I would say even a minority of Republicans who were really gung-ho and abortion ban absolutists. And they got this law when nobody was asking for this. And so because they got it and they pretended to care about this and want this forever, they've gone through with it, and it has hurt them electorally. You know, these bloodbaths that they were supposed to give the Democrats in 2022, and other off-year elections, Republicans have been getting wiped off the floor because they continue to support a bunch of policies that simply are not popular with the American people. And stuff is just, it borders on inhumane, honestly. The idea that you would tell a woman who's carrying a baby that her doctor and medical professionals have determined is not viable, like she cannot possibly have a viable pregnancy, that she should have to bring that thing to term somehow, is absurd. Rather than this be an issue with her and her doctor that they figure it out. It's just lunacy on its face. It's absolutely political hell for Republicans, and I can't believe they're still running with this thing.
Oh, I mean, and they're not, right? They're trying to not, and yet statewide, this is what Republicans are doing. But in Congress, they're like, hey, don't mention that. No, let's not talk about that. Yeah, we got what we wanted, and it's not really turning out. That's what happens when like your theory is put into practice. In theory, life is important. In practice, you're killing women. But hey, you're just a theoretical guy, and you're most likely a guy who's trying to legislate all over the place here. And it's true that I think this is also bringing Democratic women, female legislators who are both Democratic and Republican together, which is very dangerous. But just another thing that has broke just this week is that Louisiana doctors, because of that state's abortion ban, are performing C-sections on women with non-viable pregnancies in order so that it doesn't look like an abortion. C-section, major abdominal surgery in order to not do an abortion. This is wild. I mean, talk about cruel, talk about gruesome. This is all of that. But number one, and this is the last thing I'll say, this is an invasion of our privacy, which was the basis of Roe v. Wade to begin with, was all about actually saying, hey, this decision, not up to a judge, not up to a legislator. This decision is about you and your family, between you and your partner, between you and your God. Right? And my God's not your God, okay? So that is what the foundation of this was. It was totally not medical at all. It was just the right to privacy, and that has been obliterated. So amazing that Ava Birch is speaking out, and others have done so, but we will see, as Waz says. Let's see how this hits them in November. But let's get into this. This is some wild, wild dirt. New dirt has come to light in how Alina Habba, who is Trump's current lawyer, got her start representing him. And it is not shaking out in Alina's favor. In fact, if anything, it looks like she's being thrown under the bus in particular. The Daily Beast has this scoop out this week, and it starts, ironically, with another Trump legal settlement around keeping a woman quiet for, in this case, sexual harassment. But for once, not perpetrated by him. So hey, win. What happened? Donald Trump's golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, paid this week $82,500 to settle a lawsuit alleging that it had silenced a sexually harassed waitress by tricking her into an unfair hush money deal, according to the ex-employee's lawyer. Now, there's the settlement also was worded to leave one Alina Habba vulnerable for her role in doing the tricking. See, the thing is that the waitress was actually tricked by Alina Habba. This waitress's name is Alice Bianco. She was 21 years old at the time. She was being coerced and harassed by her boss to sleep with him. She was friends with Alina Habba, who offered help. So according to Bianco, she feels betrayed by Haba, who is actually one of the people at the Bedminster, who was a Bedminster regular until her lawsuit says Haba posed as a concerned friend, giving legal advice about how to address alleged sexual harassment by a supervisor, only to abuse that relationship and, quote, fraudulently induce her to quickly agree to unconscionable and illegal terms. In other words, to sign a hush money agreement. You don't talk about this. Here is, in particular, $15,000 and, oh yeah, an NDA. Bianco's lawsuit claims that when they met inside Alina Haba's car, the lawyer tried to temper Bianco's expectations by telling her, you don't want to go public with this. I've been raped. I can help you. I can protect you. Just slimeball stuff. Real slimeball stuff. The ploy, alleged ploy, rapidly paced over just 2 weeks, gave Haba leverage to arrange a hush money deal that would curry favor with the former president and earned her way into his inner circle. Bing, bing. Within a month of working on that August 2021 hush money deal, Haba became Trump's leading lawyer, defending him from a sexual assault defamation case by former Apprentice contestant Summer Zervos, replacing Trump's nationally renowned attorney on that case. That case was then later dropped. And of course, the rest is history with Alina Haba, or for now, has become Trump's faithful attack dog, representing him in the E. Jean Carroll case. The other hush money case that is about to begin was, before I go on with this drama, the fact that this was Alina Haba's long con to get into Trump's inner circle, to become his lawyer, is just insane to me.
Yeah, it's a it's a villain origin story as salacious and gross as you'll encounter. And, let's face it, if you're a lawyer like this woman, being on TV every day, having your face out there on the news as representing Donald Trump, that's a potential windfall that it could potentially be enormous. And that, somebody with very low principle or, character to be like, look, man, I'm gonna do whatever I can to get close to this man so I can get to the bag. I'm not all that surprised, but the details here are pretty freaking sordid. And talking a rape victim out of, sort of pressing charges and trying to get redemption and justice. I mean, that stuff that you might have to take that out of a movie script. People would be like, that's too cartoonish and evil.
Yeah. And just a reminder of like the kinds of rhetoric that Alina Haba engages in, or who she is in general and what she's been doing. Here's a little mashup.
I've argued presidential immunity, Martha, ad nauseum, because I represent the most targeted former president in American history. Miss James started out asking for $250 million. When she got a glimpse of just how wealthy the Trump organization is, because they're a successful business in the state of New York, because they employ thousands of people and pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes to the state of New York. No, I'm not having any second thoughts about representing President Trump. It is the proudest thing I could ever do. President Trump is leading in the polls, and now we see what you get in New York. So don't get it twisted, whoever asked me that question. I am so proud to stand with President Trump.
Okay, but is President Trump proud to stand with you, Alina? Because it looks like you're in hot water now for your role in this hush money scheme, just like Donald Trump is in hot water for his role in his hush money scheme. Because there's one line in this new settlement that just came out, again, between Alice Bianco, the waitress who was sexually harassed, and the Bedminster Trump's Bedminster Golf Club. I don't even care, but there you go. And that is there's a line that says, quote, the parties agree that Alina Haba is not party to this release. That means, according to the Daily Beast, Haba was specifically cut out of the deal, allowing Bianco to sue her directly for the exact same issues. In other words, Bianco can sue her for fraud, for coaxing her and coercing her into accepting $15,000 that, by the way, wasn't tax-free. So as soon as Bianco, according to the story, found out that it wasn't tax-free, she was like, what's going on? texts Alina Habba, and Alina's like, sorry, I can't give you advice, because she was working for Donald Trump. And Bianco's lawyer, actual good representation, says, quote, my client is certainly considering suing her, meaning Habba, for fraud. Bianco's lawyer, Nancy Erica Smith, said last week, noting she's already in communication with Habba's lawyer. So it's not looking good. And the fact that, the thing is, Donald Trump and the Bedminster Golf Club have to distance themselves from Alina Habba, and they are. They're saying, oh, this woman, we did not tell her to go tell this woman to just accept some money instead of suing us for sexual harassment. She did this on her own, which like arguably could be true. Who knows what's true anymore? But they're being like, nah, she didn't do it for us. We had nothing to do with this. Trump had nothing to do with this. And so Alina Habba, like, she might have gotten the golden job, I guess. If you ask Rudy Giuliani, it's not. But now she's still on the hook. Does that make sense, Waz? Am I sort of explaining that?
Yeah, it sounds like Donald Trump and his crew threw her under the bus at the first opportunity that was convenient for them. This isn't sticking with everything they do. Do you know how many guys have had to go to jail? How many guys have had to, if not go to jail, end up snitches and end up being stool pigeons because they were associated with Donald Trump? Like, this is the MO. Donald Trump's not gonna take the rap for you. That's not how his relationships work. You get down with Trump world when the stuff hits the fan, you're gonna have to bite the bullet, and you're gonna go down for the sins of Donald Trump, because he's
right, and it's a total conflict.
Flows.
No, and it's also a total conflict of interest. Imagine if the Bedminster Golf Club was like, yeah, we told Alina Habba to fraudulently convince this woman to accept a hush money deal. Then who's gonna represent Bedminster Golf Club? Alina Habba? Is that who, like, do you understand the sick little circles and knots that we're in right now? And mind you, with only weeks to go before the potential start of Trump's very first criminal trial, which involves, ironically, yet another hush money payment, Habba is under the microscope for standing by while her other Trump world client committed perjury. She faces potential bar complaints. This is separate, sorry. Potential bar complaints in New York for allowing Alan Weisselberg, the Trump organization's former chief financial officer, to lie in court and in 2 depositions without correcting the record. So she's messy. The girl's messy all over the place. She's been messy, and now this trial for hush money is about to start, and she's probably gonna get sued by this waitress. I mean, it's so tacky. Like, I'm just like, if I read this as some, crappy airplane novel, I'd be like, no, stop. Tacky. But good on Alice. I hope that she gets more money, way more money. If there is any money, which we need to go, we need to take our second break, do we? All right, we're taking a quick break. We're coming back. We're talking about billionaires bailing out Trump. Be right back. Welcome to the social break here on TYT. A few comments from Twitch. YTP Renewed says, this is what happens when people believe in God. They will think God will not let pregnancy be so dangerous instead of admitting that pregnancy is the product of evolution, not God. Yeah, or just a misunderstanding of how pregnancies work. Like, no actual understanding of like, oh yeah, sometimes doesn't go perfect because God's not perfect. Savage Lou says, sounds like Kamala Harris's origin story too, to be honest. Got an innocent man sentenced to death for a promotion. Yee. Perhaps, perchance. Hey, over on member comments, just a shout out to Dragon Repairmaster, which is a great name, by the way, says, thanks for the shout out to SAC. My wife and I are on a fixed income now and spent all of our discretionary income to come see you and hubby. Yay, we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. I'm the guy who had you autograph Cenk's book. My wife is a 74-year-old black woman and was smiling and laughing the whole time, or throughout. We hadn't gone to a club in a decade. Not her word, but she was surprised and delighted by the racy parts of the comedy show. It was worth everything to me to see her laugh. Oh, that is very sweet. That is, I was getting sad when I was like, oh, you spent your discretionary income on seeing my stupid jokes. But then the idea that she was laughing and that gave you joy, that gives me joy. And yes, there were racy parts. There was a whole routine. You'll never know. You have to come see me live. Why is this turning into Trump? Thank you, I remember you and you're wonderful. Thanks so much for coming out. And Trump's Lady Lump says, bravest woman in America, anyone? Ava Birch, yeah. It's so hard, especially with your Republican colleagues there who you know don't care about you, who you know are like, gross, ew, vaginas, nasty. ACGC, it's a shame that Donnie doesn't have anyone he knows who has an extra $2 billion just laying around to help him pay his debts. You know, someone who got a couple billion from the Saudis, maybe a family member. Oh, the irony. Yeah, that's Jared. Jared's too busy building up condos in Gaza. Kitty Cat Lime Hat says, I feel like the ugly one from Teen Girl Squad, except it's I have a crush on every TYT host. I don't get that reference, but that's very sweet of you. And I'm sure you're not the ugly one from Teen Girl Squad. Luke Wise Sam G says, conservatives don't believe life is sacred. They prove that based on their positions towards everyone, except, especially not in utero. Oh yeah, well, I'm going to dedicate my life to making life crappier. But I value life. Sure, Jan. And some other comments. Thank you guys so much. BRB, they'll be read later. Welcome back to TYT, Francesca Fiorentini, Wozni Lambre, and I love this news. It's just so funny to me. We are now in the why won't billionaires bail out Donald Trump phase of Donald Trump's legal trials, and they might have a good reason. Let's jump into this.
But Kevin O'Leary, I think this is where it's going to go. Now, I was wondering, if he can't get to the Supreme Court, will you loan him the $460 million?
You know,
just to help, in order to protect America's name. Think of it that way.
Yeah, I'd love to, but we bought the courts for a reason, so I don't have to. I bought Clarence, so I don't have to do this. So that was Fox News' Larry Kudlow begging Canadian billionaire Kevin O'Leary of Shark Tank to loan Trump money to pay out his $464 million bond, which again is plus the appeal on his civil fraud lawsuit that he lost, that he was, that Judge Engoron slapped on him. Because so far, no insurance company will back this bond. Trump cannot get the money, and he's got 5 days. And I did this story in the AM, so he's got like 4 days now to get this money, and he's freaking out. Here he's bleeding over on Truth Social. Judge Engoron actually wants me to put up like I have to just read this as a Valley girl, like put up hundreds of millions of dollars for the right to appeal his ridiculous decision. In other words, he's trying to take my appellate rights away from me when I have already won the appellate division, but he refuses to accept their already made decision. Nobody has ever heard of anything like this before. I would be forced to mortgage or sell sell great assets, perhaps at the fire sale prices. And if and when I win the appeal, they'd be gone. Does that make sense? Ugh, witch hunt, election interference. That just feels more right to me. But basically, yeah, they're gonna come for his assets. If he can't post this bond, Mar-a-Lago, let's go. You know what I'm saying? Like it's on. Obviously, Trump is appealing this, but Dennis Fan, who is a lawyer for the state's attorney general office, Letitia James, said in papers sent to the appeals court that, quote, the defendants failed to propose a serious alternative to fully secure the judgment of the money. There's nothing unusual about even billion-dollar judgments being fully bonded on appeal. It's like, it's perfectly normal. Let's pay $1 billion. Hey, I've seen bigger. I mean, that's basically what that letter is saying. It's like 464 million, that seemed bigger. And I've seen people who pay it. Are you not good for the money? But again, this is sending ripples. Billionaires are freaking out, and right-wing conservatives. Here's Mark Levin, who is tweeting, why are there no Republican multi-billionaires offering to lend President Trump the funds to file his appeal in the outrageous case in New York? Are none of them liquid enough to help or join with others to help? This is an outrage. Waz, you caught that? Like, are none of them liquid enough? This is like, wow, I guess you're not really liquid.
It's some reverse psychology nonsense. And honestly, man, if the pandemic proved anything to me, is that these rich people aren't as rich as they claim. So many of them went running to the government. So many of them had to take out loans to, make payroll and things of that nature in their various businesses. A lot of you guys don't have a bunch of money in the bank. A lot of it is they're billionaires on paper in terms of the alleged worth of their assets, but they can't just go out and withdraw cash from the bank and be like, here, Donald Trump, here's a bunch of money. And the people who do probably wouldn't want to be seen as doing this in the first place, right? And so I'm sure he will find a way to make this bond. That somebody will come in the 11th hour, and God only knows what strings will come attached to that. Because let's face it, the billionaires and the oligarchs of this country are the only people who seem to be able to get anything out of the government these days. So God only knows what promissory notes Trump has to sign just to get this bread, right? Saying, when I'm in the office, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I'm sure he'll get the money eventually, but it's just kind of funny to watch these guys publicly beg on behalf of the former president.
I mean, this is a little bit of a let them fight situation, right? Because I actually am of the mind that they should bail him out, because this is the dude that passed a $2 trillion tax cut that allowed them to write off their $60 million private jets. You owe him. And to your point about the pandemic, I mean, like from a flip side of that, what happened was that they knew how to take advantage of free money from the government. When all of us rubes were like, I don't know, should I get an LLC? Like we shoulda, but we didn't get any money. But these fools who were already rich, didn't need the money, got the loans, and they never paid them back. That was thanks to Donald Trump. So these are your buddies. And if he's reelected, he will extend the tax cuts, which expire in 2025. He'll extend them for another however many years. They should bail him out. But if he doesn't win, well, then they're out $464 million. But not every rich person is throwing him under the bus. Hedge fund founder John Paulson is throwing a fundraiser. Cute. I hope, what's his name? Vanilla Ice performs. That'll be chill. Co-chairs of the inaugural leadership dinner in Palm Beach include hedge fund billionaire Robert Mercer. Oh God, that backwash. And his daughter Rebecca, backwash too. Oil tycoon Harold Hamm, hotelier and space entrepreneur Robert Bigelow, and casino mogul Steve Wynn. Yes, also asexual predator Steve Wynn. Never forget, don't stay at that dude's hotel. But he's got cool friends. Anyway, price tag for the dinner, $250,000 to $814,000. Can I just throw this graphic up? Because what about these guys? What about the rubes who put this stand with Trump, fund the $355 million unjust judgment? Can we spare a thought for, I'm sorry, this screenshot is showing that Juan Carlos Chinilla donated $20. Man, Juan, you could have used that money for anything. Anything, dude. You just happened to got screen grab. My bad. It was just Juan. If you're out there, give me $20.
Tough break.
Tough break. It's just.
Go get yourself some Domino's pizza or something, brother.
Seriously.
Make it a blockbuster night.
Go see Dune 2. Come on. See Dune 2, get a small popcorn. I don't know if you have enough for a large. And don't donate to Donald Trump's legal fund. But anyway, we will see. It's gonna be fun to take bets on which billionaire swoops in at the last minute. And then we immediately have to boycott everything that person has touched. Any final words, Waz?
This is just, I just love, whenever Trump and money comes up, it just shows how fraudulent the entire concept of this guy being some rich, massive business genius, blah, 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 blah. Yet he can't pay his way out of his own foibles. It's silly.
Yeah. I really hope that this chapter in American history is just silly. Do not read. Silly. Skip. Skip to next chapter when things are less silly. Speaking of silly, we really didn't have anything that fun on this rundown in this hour, but hopefully Jordan, Yule, and Jank will have something good for you and juicy. I know there's more, but Waz, where can people find you and follow your work?
TheRinger.com. If you have even a passing interest in pop culture, in sports, check us out every day. We're giving you guys new and fresh, hot content off the presses. And check out Woke Bros wherever you get your podcasts. Coach Kate called me up, said the team needed me last minute, and I had to come through. So shouts to Coach Kate and the crew.
This is last minute. Oh, I'm so glad you were able to join us. Yes, and thank you to Kate and all the producers. And everybody follow me at Franny Fio and listen to The Bituation Room or watch it Tuesdays and Fridays, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, right in the sweet spot. So I don't step on TYT's toes. You know how I'm thoughtful. All right, see you guys next time. More in the second hour.
I just love you.
You would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one. You're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said no, other than day one.
By locking up his enemies, by breaking all the rules, the courts, yeah, right, them and what army?
This country needs a dictator. I hate to say that, but it's the truth.
It's the truth. From the Young Turks, Americans saying they want a dictator.
I'd rather have Donald Trump as a dictator for 4 years. I'm going dictator Trump for sure.
How crazy will his supporters go?
I'm going to be a dictator for one day.
Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. Here at TYT, we understand this. That's why we're not gonna price gouge you or use inflation as an excuse to raise our prices. A TYT membership is not your typical subscription, but basic membership is still just $4.99. So what do you get for that price? For starters, you're getting exclusive programming, unique, exclusive designs from Shop TYT, access to a members-only chat, giveaways, emojis, and so many other amazing perks. But most importantly, you're helping to make an impact. As a TYT member, you not only help us do the shows every day, but you drive real positive change in the process. In 2017, we helped to start Justice Democrats right here on TYT. That's a group that got a dozen progressives elected into Congress. That's amazing, you did that. Your support also funds TYT's very own investigative reporting. Just recently, our reporters exposed the Fellowship Foundation and pressured lawmakers into boycotting that bigoted event. Isn't that amazing? We raised over $30,000 for Jackson, Mississippi and delivered clean water to thousands of people in need. Our petitions, polls, and community of activists help keep the corruption of Washington in check. That's the impact of what just $4.99 a month from our members can do. And we're just getting started. Positive change doesn't occur overnight, but with your contribution, we can make it happen together.
I got pulled in. They told me, hey, listen, Cenk, we're insiders. We are the establishment. People in Washington tell me that they're concerned about your tone. We think that there's a better role for you, and it's not in 6 o'clock. The problem with the mainstream media is they're desperate to get access. They don't challenge the government. They don't challenge power. We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media.
Components that corrupt our politicians, I think, also corrupt mainstream media. It's really difficult for cable outlets to talk about things like income inequality, wealth inequality, when The advertisers that are funding their shows are the same corporations that want to ensure that the same system continues. People watch digital media or new media, they get a completely different message. They focus on the issues that matter or resonate more with the constituency. We need to know one thing. Is the corporate media incompetent?
Corporate media, I can't hear you. Establishment press, where are you? I can't hear you. But the media's position I am clear on. Everything is pro-war, so everything is just framed that way. In this case, I mean, war is inevitable, right? I mean, the defense contractors should get a couple more $1 trillion.
You ready for the stunning results? Only 6% of people say they have a great deal of confidence in the press. Wakey, wakey, okay? Progressives don't like the media either. You know why? It's the corporate media. Corporate media sounds like a conspiracy. Wait. Who owns you? Multi-billion-dollar corporations, public corporations. You have to do corporate media because corporations own us. Yeah, that's how it works.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
So people, leave Pity City, let's get it done.
All right, back on the Young Turks. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, that's for Friday. Cenk Uygur, Jordan Uhl with you guys. We got an amazing hour for you guys, for you all, and so do our members. Who look at all these wonderful people. Ed Korn just joined on tyt.com/join. Sexy Speed Racer 317. C Holmes and Alice all contributed, thereby becoming American heroes. We definitely need it, guys, and we appreciate you. We're one of the few survivors in digital media so far. Jonathan Bosley just became a member on YouTube by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. That makes you a hero. By the way, if you have, we're on so many different outlets for a 24-hour channel, including Samsung TVs. If you have all of those different places, put on the Young Turks. Make sure your family members, friends, everybody else sees it. Run it all day long. All right, Jordan, you got stories.
Take a look at this.
From shortly after my arrest on October 9, 2019 to now, I have been trying to share the irrefutable truth with you. The American people have been lied to by Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and various cohorts of individuals in government and media positions.
Today, in the wildly messy House Oversight Committee hearing into Hunter and Joe Biden's alleged criminality, a man named Lev Parnas, a former aide to Rudy Giuliani, testified that Giuliani sent him on a mission to dig up dirt on the Bidens. Unfortunately for Giuliani, though, Parnas found nothing. Let's watch some more.
From November 2018 to October 2019, I was a key participant and a witness to numerous efforts to prove that Joe and Hunter Biden were linked to corruption in Ukraine. Rudy Giuliani, on behalf of then President Donald Trump, tasked me with a mission to travel the globe, finding dirt on the Bidens so that an array of networks could spread misinformation about them, thus securing the 2020 election for Donald J. Trump. I found precisely zero evidence of the Bidens' corruption in Ukraine. No credible source has ever provided proof of criminal activity, not the FBI, CIA, nor the NSA. The only information ever pushed on the Bidens in Ukraine has come from one source, and one source only: Russia and Russian agents.
Parnas also testified that he was part of setting up the now infamous perfect phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky.
Also said that Mr. Giuliani was to, quote, deliver a precise message in very strict words, unquote, with respect to the administration of the then newly installed president of Ukraine, President Zelensky.
He basically told me not to be nice, to be very stern, and relay the message that unless Zelensky announced an investigation into the Bidens by Monday, this was Sunday, that there would be no cooperation, no aid from to Ukraine from the United States, and the Vice President Pence at the time that was scheduled to appear for the inauguration would not appear to the inauguration.
That would seem to corroborate that very famous and beautiful telephone conversation between President Trump then and President Zelensky.
Oh, absolutely. I was a part of setting up that phone call, that famous phone call that Trump had with Zelensky.
Another witness was Tony Bobulinski, a former Hunter Biden associate who claims Biden was involved in his son's dealings. Let's see how his testimony went.
Is it your testimony today that you personally witnessed President Joe Biden commit a crime?
I believe the fact that he was sitting with me while I was putting together a business deal.
Did you witness the president commit a crime? Is it your testimony today?
Yes.
And what crime have you witnessed?
How much time do I have to go through it?
It is simple. You name the crime. Did you watch him steal something?
Corruption statutes, RICO, and conspiracy.
What is it? What is the crime, sir?
You
specifically.
You asked me to answer the question. I answered the question.
No.
RICO, you're obviously not familiar with. Corruption statutes.
Excuse me, sir. RICO is not a crime. It is a category.
So we've got a lot more, but Cenk, I want to bring you in here. You see this circus. What are we doing here? Why is this continuing to happen and drag on in Congress?
Yeah, so it's pretty humiliating for the Republicans. I'm so curious what Republican voters are going to think about it, because even some right-wing media has begun to turn on the circus. So we'll get to that in a minute. Newsmax, Fox News. Dana Perino, just a little bit before we came on air, was basically saying, what are we doing here? Okay, well, we've got no evidence. It's the same hearing over and over and over again. Did you know that one of the witnesses has turned out to be a Chinese agent? And then, of course, the biggest witness turned out to be a Russian agent. Oops. And AOC, after that exchange with the witness, actually made a great point. She said, I think the real question is, when did the Republicans know that their star witness was lying? Because that's a good question. Was it when they found out when the FBI arrested him? Or did they know he was a Russian agent earlier? Did they know that he was fabricating all this evidence earlier? And so, and even the Newsmax host that challenges Jim Jordan, because now even Republicans are getting tired of this, like I said, voters and some portions of the media, said, look, if Joe Biden, you guys only have about 7.5 months left. If Joe Biden wins re-election, then there was no point to this. Okay, so if you're an independent voter or even a Republican voter, do you understand what he just said? That means this is all obviously done to try to hurt Biden's re-election campaign based on absolutely nothing. And guys, is everybody in the world deep state? I mean, are there no bounds of reason for MAGA? So, because like if you say to me, hey, the establishment is out to get outsiders. I said, well, that's largely true. I've seen him do it to Bernie Sanders. In some ways, they've done it to me. And is it because there's a cabal in the CIA? No, it's groupthink. And they love insiders. They think insiders are, what do they say? The cat's meow? Okay, whatever it is. Oh, they're the only credible ones. Oh my God, if you have power and wealth, you're incredibly credible. If you're an outsider, bleh. So you don't need to convince me of that. I know that I've lived that, right? But everyone's deep state? So wait, was the Russian agent deep state too? And that's why he lulled the Republicans into saying, oh yeah, I got evidence of a crime. I'm just kidding, I'm a Russian agent and I'm gonna get arrested and make you guys look like jackasses. No, he's not deep state. Well, he is deep state, but for the Russians. Okay, so, and I know like things trigger MAGA, like if you say the word Russia in any context, well, even this guy who's obviously a Russian agent and obviously lied about Biden, and now Republicans also concede, yes, Russian agent lied about Biden. They're like, no, you said the word Russia, 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 Russia. It's a hoax. Everything's a hoax. I don't want to hear it. No, Biden's guilty. If you want to tell me that Hunter Biden's a clown and is not a Ukrainian gas expert, of course, of course. Was he trying to scam people and using the last name Biden? Of course, right? We're not mainstream media. We can see that. But you can't concede that they have absolutely no evidence. They look like utter fools. And now they can't bring forward impeachment because they don't even have enough Republican votes for it. This has been, as Jamie Raskin accurately described it, a spectacular failure.
Yeah, if there, like you're saying, if there was evidence, they would have already brought it to the floor for a vote. Instead, they're going to have these hearings, drag people in front of Congress, go for sound bites, and continue to drive a narrative. And in the past, we've seen the right successfully convince people that relatively trivial things or trivial people in the government are responsible for these deep state conspiracies. And when they only consume right-wing media, the viewers internalize that and they think, whoa, this is a seriously huge story. Nellie Orr, someone that no normal person, if you went up to on the street and asked who they were, would know who that person was. But in the Fox world, the Fox cinematic universe, that is one of the most influential and corrupt people in government because they continue to hammer the name. Here, as we'll show, they're losing the right. They're losing the right-wing media. And after months of pretending that the Biden impeachment effort had any hopes of succeeding, right now, right-wing media appears to be done cheerleading for it. So take a look at this.
At the end of this week, Congress is due to go into recess for another 2 weeks. And I do think that in some ways it just feels like they keep doing the same hearing over and over again. And people are starting to wonder, at some point, do you fish or cut bait? And do something about a vote or not and move on to the general election.
So is this moving, again, 7.5 months to go until the election. Is impeachment the next step? Are you going to hold a vote on the House floor? I know it's up to Mike Johnson, but the margins, Congressman, you lost Kevin McCarthy. Ken Buck left last week. George Santos was ousted. Unless you get Democratic votes, this is going to be real tough. So it kind of seems like you're chasing your tail at this point because this is not going to go anywhere.
The needle hasn't moved appreciably on this case since he originally said what he said. Where is the evidence of wrongdoing on the president's part, and how long can you continue this investigation without that evidence?
Jacob, I'm curious, have they completely lost the right-wing media? This is an apparatus that will typically cheerlead anything they do. Can they win them back over, or is the media completely moved on?
Yeah, so it's of course not clear cut because a lot of the folks in right-wing media are still pretending that this is real. Fox News legal analyst was talking about like, yeah, maybe there's no evidence, but I mean, Biden's definitely lying, so there's something up. Something's up. Right? So again, if you're a Republican voter, how long are you going to hear something could have happened, might have happened, because it looks kind of fishy, kind of smoked. I don't like Hunter Biden, need your laptop, and never get any evidence and still believe that there's some sort of secret evidence that Comer and Jordan are hiding, but as they're being clowned, even on right-wing media, are keeping in their back pockets. Well, this thing's almost over. Why would they keep it in their back pockets? Of course they don't have it. They didn't have it in the closed door hearings. Hunter Biden showed up, did the closed door testimony. Did you see the Republicans go crazy about the testimony? No, because they couldn't get him. They had nothing connecting Hunter Biden to Joe Biden. Did you see them? Oh my God! Oh, the leaked testimony and this. Nothing. They brought in the guy who was supposed to probe the case, and he said, yeah, Hunter did all these things, but he's definitely not connected to Joe Biden. I mean, just an absolute humiliation. And why? I told you from day one, I know these Republican politicians, they're total crooks. All they are is giant liars. So you think those giant liars somehow had to still have the truth that they have not revealed yet? Come on, man. And so I think that, I don't know, look, maybe I'm being overly optimistic and maybe even naive or whatever you want to call it. But I think even some MAGA guys are starting to look around and go, yeah, it turns out they're politicians and they were lying. And yeah, they don't have anything on Joe Biden. And you could hate Joe Biden all you want. We all agree that Hunter was a clown, basically selling his name. but you know you got nothing on Joe Biden. And he didn't do it. Why would Joe Biden do it? Anyway, you don't have to get into why he would do it or not do it because they have zero evidence. So they'll come back on so if you're in the super hardcore MAGA base, you don't need any stinking evidence and you're waiting for JFK Jr. to come back to Austin and become president with Trump or whatever you're waiting on, right? But the rest of the planet has moved on other than to make fun of these bozos who are going to have yet another hearing. But last thing I'll say on it is, actually two things. One is Lev Parnas had a hilarious moment that I don't want you to not know about. As he's doing this thing, and remember, he worked with Giuliani hand in glove the whole time trying to get Biden, and as you heard him say, he couldn't get any evidence on him, and now realized and spent time. You know that Lev Parnas guy, because everybody's gonna say, oh yeah, man, he's against Trump. He went to jail for 20 months for illegally donating money to Donald Trump. That's how much he loved Donald Trump. Okay, so this is not a guy who was deep state or who was against Trump. He spent 20 months in prison for supporting Donald Trump. And he comes out and he's like, guys, we were lying. We didn't have any evidence. Okay, so all right, but in the midst of his opening statement, he says, I had an unindicted co-conspirator, and we now know who it is. It's that guy right there. And it's Pete Sessions, one of the Republican congressmen. They're literal criminals and crooks. And they bring you, oh yeah, hey, remember when we were cheating together? Now can you lie for us? Oh, you're not lying anymore. I'm still lying. You're not anymore? Oh, well. So that's Pete Sessions for you. These are the crooks that are in charge. All right, so the thing I was gonna end on, Jordan, is, look, if you're a Republican voter out there or independent or anyone else, what have the Republicans done for you? So they've had the House now for all this time. Have they even tried to pass a single bill that would help your life? Like, I beat up on the Democrats 24/7 because Biden passed about 15% of his agenda and he threw the other 85% under a bus. And mainstream media will tell you he's a demigod who got everything done and he's like the greatest president ever since FDR. They literally say with a straight face on MSNBC. And I tell you that's not true, but he got some things done. I guess I'll take something over nothing, right? So don't you have the same ask of your leaders? Is there anyone in MAGA going to the Republican politicians, hey, what in God's green earth have you done to improve my life? Nothing. They haven't even proposed a single thing that would help you in your life. All they're trying to do is, how can we get an advantage? Us. Me. Trump. Oh, we're gonna win and we're gonna get Biden. Yeah, but when do you actually do something for your voters? The answer is never. They don't give a damn about you. And this whole circus is about them trying to gain an advantage. And instead, of course, the clowns took the banana cream pie, shoved it in their own face like the morons that they are. I don't know why I made it banana cream.
That's a good point. I mean, banana cream aside, I think what you're saying is a good point. And there have been moments where their fellow Republicans have made floor speeches asking, what are we doing? What have we accomplished? And what are we going to run on? When they're openly admitting they're worried about their own prospects in 2024 because they don't have anything to talk about. You've seen over the past few years how abortion is clearly a losing issue for Republicans after, unfortunately, decades of it being a motivator for people to just plug their nose, go to the ballot box and vote for Republicans on abortion. It's now a loser. And culture war issues are not leading to electoral success. They don't have anything. And we've got a really funny story later about how even in the face of opposition, Republicans are still trying to take credit for things they didn't even support. So stick around for that. But this hearing, as comical as it was, we can't leave you on a down note. We did compile some of the more cringe-inducing moments from it.
Congressman, can you explain what you're wearing? I just came to thank James Comer for taking all of our intelligence and using it in the committee. Maybe he can come see the technology in our grocery stores. Thank you.
Congressman, do you think this behavior is kind of immature?
It's not a stunt. It's I'm simply asking that Mr. Bob.
You don't have a parliamentary inquiry. Chair now recognizes Mr. Parnas for
Mr.
equal
Chairman,
time.
Mr. Chairman,
Chair recognizes Mr. Parnas.
Does the committee have the text messages that Mr. Bob?
Mr. Chairman, we don't have time for games by Democrats today.
We have important witnesses here. We're in suspension here waiting for the clerk to come so we can take the vote that your side of the aisle requested.
You can't make this stuff up.
You can't.
This is Jurassic Park. Jeez.
Who left cocaine at the White House? Biden administration doesn't seem to have time to answer these questions. They're too busy investigating parents at school board meetings, labeling Catholics extremists, retaliating against whistleblowers.
Do you feel represented, Cenk? Do you feel like your interests are adequately represented there?
I mean, when they got nothing, then they go back to like the greatest hits. Yeah, and Solyndra and other buzzwords. So look, last thing on this, Jamie Raskin finally did what I was asking for. He said, I'd like to subpoena Jared Kushner, ask him about the $2 billion that he got from Saudi Arabia. I mean, as long as we're talking about the kids of the presidents taking advantage, one guy got like 5 or 10 million or whatever from Ukrainian gas and art and other nonsense. The other guy got $2 billion. By the way, after some people allege that he gave the Saudis critical US intelligence that they used against our sources. So why don't we subpoena him and find out? You know what the Republicans did? No way. That's actual corruption. We love actual corruption. We love Saudi Arabia. We love when they rip off our government and sell out our agents so that the Saudis and the Muslim fundamentalists that run that country, the dictators that run that country, can win and win and win. Yay, go Saudis, go Jared Kushner. No way do we actually investigate real corruption. So there you have it. That's the Republican crooks that are in charge. All right.
I'm glad. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I think we got to take the break. I think we've said what we needed to say on that. There's actually a bit of a shocking development in a story that we're going to do next. And after that, unfortunately, Israel seems to have executed 4 journalists. Washington Post has a terrific story on it. We'll explain what I mean by that when we come back. All right, back on the social break here. All right, so first of all, guys, make sure you're checking out our election headquarters on Snapchat. We're almost everywhere. So if you've got Snap, check out Election HQ on there. Shop TYT has signed books by me, Ida Rodriguez, and Dr. Rashad Ritchie. And if you buy all 3 books in a bundle, you save 10%. Don't say I didn't do anything for you. ShopTYT.com. Wow, what a big deal. No, but seriously, they're great books. If you want as a bundle, it does save you a little bit. And there's more member merch as well. I'll get more to that later. Okay, now let's go to our members. Trump's Lady Lump says, Cenk, I caught your debate with Rabbi Fooley, and I just want to say congrats on taking that buffoon down in real time. Yeah, it's a funny thing now. Now a lot of people come up to me and they're like, both thanking me for clowning Rabbi Fooley, as you called him, Shmuley, or apologizing. Like, I'm so sorry you had to deal with it. So here's someone else that saw this. Kelly K said, Cenk, you probably won't see this. Wrong, just saw it, Kelly. But after watching your segment on Piers Morgan with Rabbi Crazy Pants, thank you so much for the laughs. You had way more patience than I could have mustered in that situation. Cheers. And guys, like Rabbi Shmuley is probably the worst representative for his side. So like I'm gonna do something hilarious and kind of unusual, but don't like judge even the Israeli position by Rabbi Shmuley, because he's so over the top and such a clown, like that I feel bad for the other side that he's the one representing them. Rural Dragon says, you would think the GOP voters would like to see Congress attempt some positive change in their lives. If I had voted for them, I'd be disgusted with the circus act they're putting out there. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that I've said this a billion times. Republican voters figured out that the whole system is corrupt, and I give them credit for that. and they wound up picking the most personally corrupt person to fight against that, which made no sense. And then now, guys, if you're a Republican voter, what are you doing? Like, do you think your government should work for you? Do you want anything for the average guy, the average American, as opposed to the wealthy and the powerful? The only thing the Republicans proposed that was a real bill was to cut IRS auditors specifically who would audit the wealthy. So the only thing they did was to try to protect their wealthy donors. If you're a Republican voter, you're happy with that? Wasn't that the corruption you hated? Doesn't make any sense. Okay. All right, Theater Goddess has a helpful suggestion, I believe. Suggestion for members to help out a little bit more. If you can dual wield devices, watch one platform, comment where you have your membership, and then switch for the post game. Like I watched the show on YouTube on my Roku and comment on the main site from my phone. Well, you're lovely for doing that. I appreciate that. Yes, and if you have us on a 24-hour channel, leave it on if you can. We'll be back. On TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys. Metal Turtle 571 gifted 5 subs on Twitch, and we appreciate them. And Don Quixote gifted 1, and on YouTube, BH gifted 5, and William Potts gifted 10. You guys are awesome, and members are the Young Turks. We're a community, and without you guys, we don't even exist. And so, thank you for letting us speak out on your behalf and to try to get you some positive change in the world, and at least deliver the news honestly. Speaking of which, Jordan.
This is a big story. We may soon see the end of gas-powered cars thanks to a new rule from President Joe Biden's EPA. And what the New York Times is already calling one of the most significant climate regulations in the nation's history, the rule would require that most new cars sold by 2032 are full EVs or plug-in hybrids. They write, the rule increasingly limits the amount of pollution allowed from tailpipes over that time, so that by 2032, more than half the new cars sold in the US would most likely be zero emissions vehicles in order for car makers to meet the standards. That would avoid more than 7 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions over the next 30 years, according to the EPA. That's the equivalent of removing a year's worth of all the greenhouse gases generated by the US, the country that has historically pumped the most carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Initially, the target for the Biden administration was 2030, but after meeting and consulting with the UAW, the Auto Workers Union, they pushed the target back a couple of years to accommodate for the shifts in the industry. The industry would then be assembling mostly cars that require fewer parts and thus only need fewer workers. But they put out a statement earlier today, applauded the Biden administration, and added, the rule does not require Ford, GM, Stellantis, or any other domestic automaker to do anything beyond the commitments they've made to shareholders to capitalize on the growing EV market. We reject the fear-mongering that says tackling the climate crisis must come at the cost of union jobs. They added, the billionaire class and their allies in government expect workers to bear the brunt of the crisis. When it comes to the EV transition, corporations see an opportunity to collect taxpayer subsidies, increase profits, lower job quality, and leave workers behind. Now, of course, at the same time this announcement was rolled out, it met opposition in the Senate. Senator Mitt Romney tweeted, this is a totally unserious rule. Not only is this unrealistic for rural parts of our country, but it will also increase our reliance on China for batteries. Serious climate efforts should focus on developing new technologies that can be adapted globally. Texas Senator John Cornyn called it more elitist pie-in-the-sky policy on the backs of the hardworking American taxpayers. And the other senator from Texas, Ted Cruz, added Biden's latest ban on gas-powered vehicles and replacement with electric vehicles is another direct assault on consumer choice and the American way of life. It ignores the needs of American families in order to appease the radical environmental lobby at the expense of millions of jobs supported by the automotive industry. Now, of course, we already talked about the fear-mongering that the UAW condemns. You see it there in Cruz's tweet. But what's really interesting is he points out the power of lobbying, claiming the radical environmental lobby is responsible for this. So we took a look at who their donors are, and wouldn't you know it, those 3 senators are the top recipients of oil money in the Senate since 1990. Mitt Romney has received $8.4 million, John Cornyn has received $4.9 million, and Ted Cruz has taken $4.7 million from the oil and gas industry. Now, Cenk, I'm curious. This rule is, of course, going to be met with intense lobbying, maybe even legal challenges. But do you think that it can withstand that intense pressure? Do you think we'll see this rule be implemented?
Yeah, so look, there's a lot of caveats here. In the last round of negotiations before this rule was announced, they put in a bunch of loopholes, and some environmental activists say that you could drive a F-150 through those loopholes. It's going to take a while to implement. It must be implemented more than 60 days before Biden leaves office, because then if that happens, it will be very hard to reverse, even if Trump wins. If Biden waits till within the 60-day period, that means he never meant it in the first place. Let's just be clear about that. But for now, guys, this is huge. As Biden himself would say, this is a big effing deal. So look, you've got to make sure that you look out for the average American. And the last time they passed regulation like this inside the Inflation Reduction Act, they did put in a huge subsidy for people to be able to buy electric cars, and created a new bucket of money to have more recharging stations throughout the country, which you absolutely need if we're going to make this kind of change. But this is significant. This is not around the edges. So this, combined with Trump now saying about Gaza that Israel should just finish them, starts to become significant in terms of if you were unsure about which way to go and you're frustrated at both sides. Trump says he would reverse this in a second. And so if you care about climate change, there's many things that Joe Biden didn't do anything on. But on this, he already put in something significant in the Inflation Reduction Act. That's one of the things we do give him credit for. If he actually implements this, this is a pretty massive change and real movement towards fighting climate change. So credit where credit is due, and perhaps massive credit. So that's point one. And to be honest, Jordan, I'm borderline shocked by it. Like I can't believe they're doing real change and actually fighting climate change. I'm stunned by it. So that's great news. Now onto the senators that you mentioned. Look, while we might be a fan of Mitt Romney for his love of hot dogs, remember who Mitt Romney actually is. He's one of the most corporate politicians of our lifetime. So is it surprising that even on his way out, that he's doing favors for the industry that gave him about $9 million over his career? Of course it's not surprising. I mean, look at and Mitt Romney might be a lot of things, but he's not dumb, right? There's plenty of politicians in this country that are not bright, right? But Romney's not among them. So when Romney says, well, I don't think this is the right path. I think we should just develop new technologies. Really, Mitt? Really, Mittens? Okay, what does that mean? We just develop new technologies. Oh, okay, great. We weren't working on any. We'll start now, and 20, 30 years from now, maybe we'll have a new technology. No, that's absurd. That's basically saying, I don't want you to do anything. I don't give a damn about the climate or the planet or whether we're destroying ourselves. By the way, he's in his 70s. I care about the $9 million I was bribed by oil companies, so I'm gonna tell you not to do a goddamn thing about it, because I want you to guzzle up as much oil as possible. And if you're destroying the planet, he's like, look at all the different ways that the corporations that I ran and I supported have destroyed things over and over again. He doesn't mind that at all. And then Cornyn and Cruz are obvious. One other thing that Romney mentioned, he says this would make us overly reliant on China because of the battery situation. I'm not saying that that's a non-issue. That is an interesting issue and one we're gonna have to get past. But is that a reason not to do the right thing? Hey, we might have an issue down the line if we can't catch up to China in that one part of this industry. So let's just do nothing. No, that's absurd. Now, if he had proposed, hey, look, this is great, this is amazing, we're gonna save the planet, this finally makes sense, humanity working together to do the right thing, but I also want a bill that gets us to the same place China is in developing those batteries, so let's get that done. I'd say, okay, that's productive. But that's not what they're doing here. They're obviously corrupt politicians trying to protect their donors.
Yeah, that shift will be costly, and they know that. They know that for the manufacturers it would be costly, and that would impact shareholder dividends, revenue, etc. For the oil companies, that would be potentially catastrophic, hopefully catastrophic. And that's why they're rushing out immediately to say, whoa, 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 this is terrible. This is about consumer choice. The radical environmentalists are at it again, when it just makes sense. It makes perfect sense. I'm new to California, but I had sticker shock, even hearing about it before I got here, about the gas prices here. It's unsustainable. If people can't afford to continue filling their tanks, give them another option. And if we have renewable sources of energy to power these cars, that's great. It's a win-win. There's also a lot of fear mongering about the price of the cars themselves. That won't be an issue when you have a lot of supply. Right now you have little supply and moderate demand. That's going to drive prices up. But when all of these manufacturers, all of these domestic manufacturers are pushing out electric vehicles across all the different classes of car, you're going to see options for everybody, options for every level of purchasing power. That's great. So I'm encouraged by this. We definitely have an element of skepticism to see if it pans out. I hope it does, because it's better for the planet.
Yeah, look, I will take away all the credit and then heap twice as much blame on them if this is a trick. If it turns out they never meant it, they don't implement it, they come up with some excuse, or they don't put it into effect until there's less than 60 days left. But for the moment being, it looks like it is a significant proposal by Joe Biden in a way that is very surprising. And we asked the Democrats to do something all the time, and here they are doing something, and it's not a little bit, and it's not around the edges. So this is actually a great development. So let's hope that it's real and that they actually follow through on it. Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, how Israel might have executed some journalists. It's an amazing story from the Washington Post. We'll share that with you when we come back.
Hot dog is my favorite meat. Oh.
Back during the social break here. Check out all the merch on shoptyt.com, especially for the members. We got some new 90s style shirts on there that I think you guys will like. The members just voted on the pirate flag to represent us for the rest of the year. That's not up yet, but it will be soon. So keep checking out shoptyt.com. All right, Ulysses writes in, I love Jordan's Slayer sign on his wall. You're not alone. Several people wrote in about that. CB1 says electric cars are not practical for most people. I hear you, brother, and that's why we've talked about that honestly here. And they're trying to make it more practical by putting provisions into bills that make it more and more practical, whether it's subsidies so that it's more affordable, or whether it's the government providing charging stations, et cetera, et cetera. Luke Wise Sam G writes in, the West should have gotten serious about this 35 years ago. Sad that it's been so politicized because of the funding of the oil companies. That's 100% right, and that's exactly what happened. I think you should watch the documentary "Who Killed the Electric Car" from a while back. Well, now it's resurrected, but it was the oil companies. They tried to kill mass transportation, et cetera, in this country, not just the car companies, but more so the oil companies. They've been a force for evil in this planet for a long, long time. I don't have a clever handle, says, why aren't we talking about Jordan's smile? It's the best. Well, now we're talking about it, so I hope you're happy, okay? That wasn't your best one. See, that he is a very lovable dude. He is. Slayer though that he is. I'm a damn lib writes in, Biden should stop fracking now if he's serious. Instead, he starts by angering voters instead of angering corporations. I hear you, and don't get me wrong, I got you on that. And these provisions are not necessarily against corporations. Depends on how you view the auto industry and what you think of these. He did put the burden first on citizens, but still, it's a positive development. It really is. And in terms of the fracking, you're absolutely right about that too. So this is not to say that Biden's an angel or all of his policies are good on this issue at all. But when he takes a big step forward, you got to give him credit. Unleashed JJ46 says 2 years been great. Keep it up, Cenk and Jordan. TYT rocks from Canada with love. Thank you. Perfect phone call dragon. That's funny. Says, hey, just because Republicans in Congress have a humiliation kink doesn't mean we should kink shame them. Well, that's very fair and very lib of you, okay? So now let's go to Super Chat. Box wrote in, Cenk Igor, my guy, that's what Rabbi Shmuley kept calling me. You won the internet yesterday on Piers. I know you didn't want to debate him, but that was pure gold. All your points landed perfectly and it was deeply entertaining. You have to go back on again. Well, thank you for saying that. We'll see. All right, we'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan and his beautiful smile. There it is. There it is. Caught you. All right, Jan B, thank you for the beautiful donation on Super Chat. Dawn Whitehead, thank you for the gift of the Young Turks membership on YouTube. And Jennifer O'Neill, welcome aboard. Great to have you with us. Jennifer just hit the join button below and thereby became an American hero and a purveyor of truth and honesty and decency. All right, Jordan, what's next?
No smiles in this story, Cenk. This is a heavy one.
Yep.
In January, an IDF missile strike killed 2 Palestinian journalists and wounded 2 Palestinian freelance journalists. The Israeli military claimed that the group was an immediate threat. But yesterday, the Washington Post published an investigation that casts serious doubt on the IDF's assertions. Here's what we know for sure about what happened. The 2 men who were killed were Hamza Dadu, who's 27, and Mustafa Thureya, who was 30, both of whom were members of an Al Jazeera crew. The 2 men who were wounded were Muhammad Al-Kawaji and Hazem Rajab. On the morning of January 7th, the 4 journalists traveled to a family home that had recently been hit by an IDF airstrike. The IDF claimed that the home was being used as an office by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Thureya had a drone in the air by 10:39 a.m. The Post obtained footage from Thureya's drone, which was a consumer model that you can buy at Best Buy. The Post found that no Israeli soldiers, aircraft, or other military equipment are visible in that footage. But here's what you can see. The clips show reporters in blue press vests surveying a mass of mangled wires and concrete. Children watch as men pull out bodies. Civil defense workers drape blankets over the dead and carry them away. And the Post did even more digging, thankfully. 2 analysts reviewed available satellite imagery of the area taken by Planet Labs and Airbus on January 7th. covering a radius of roughly 1.2 miles from where the drone was launched. Neither expert saw any evidence of military deployments or militant activity. Now keep those facts in mind as we continue. Just after 11 a.m., the site of the airstrike was hit with a second strike. The 4 journalists fled, trailing an ambulance that was carrying injured journalists. 10 minutes later, the car carrying the 4 journalists was hit with an airstrike. Eyewitness videos show the grisly aftermath. Thuraya and the driver of the car were torn apart by the strike. Kawaji was on the ground, bleeding heavily as medics scrambled to assemble a stretcher for him. The freelancer's face was burned and his jaw was split open. Rajab had severe burns and lost the use of an eye. Then the IDF quickly began to try to spin the story. And the IDF said in a statement that its aircraft had identified and struck a terrorist who operated an aircraft that posed a threat to IDF troops. But the next day, IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari appeared to backtrack. Every journalist that dies, it's unfortunate, he told NBC, saying the drone had made them look like terrorists. Then, in a new statement on January 10th, the IDF said that the drone had posed an immediate threat to nearby soldiers, though the strike occurred approximately 15 minutes after Thuraya had stopped recording. The Post shared Thuraya's footage with the Israeli military and asked if it could identify any moments when the drone posed a threat to its troops. We have nothing more to add, the IDF said. In addition, the IDF claimed that Dadu and Thuraya were members of terrorist groups. The January 10th statement also linked to a document dated June 2022 with the logo and name of Al-Quds Brigade, the military wing of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Dadu's name appeared next to a line item for $224. Eric Stair, a historian and postdoctoral researcher at the University of Oslo, who has written a book on the history of the PIJ, stated that the use of language on the document, particularly the phrasing of geographic areas, was unusual, as was the mix of English and Arabic text in a document supposedly intended for internal use. The IDF also stated that they had a document that listed Thuraya as the squad deputy commander in the Al-Qadisiyeh battalion of Hamas's Gaza City Brigade, but did not publicly release that document. Al Jazeera has, of course, denied both accusations against the reporters, and it's worth noting that both cleared their security checks by the IDF in the weeks before their deaths. They have traveled through checkpoints throughout the city, and Dadu even obtained permission to leave Gaza altogether. I mean, Cenk, this is just another story of the IDF doing something, lying about it to the media, spinning it, and months, weeks later, we then find out the truth. It's an unfortunate tale, but it's happened time and time again.
Yes. So now let's review what happened. Now, Jordan told you a lot of it there, but look at all those lies by the IDF. And if you still think that they're not lying, come on, brothers and sisters. So they say, oh, these guys are no good terrorists. Here, we have this one piece of evidence. And then an expert looks at it and goes, it's like mixed with Arabic and English. Yeah, Hamas is writing in English. I mean, that's so, you're not even trying. It's like the worst propaganda in the world. They're terrorists, but you let them in and out of Gaza, which is like the hardest. Gaza's so hard to get into. But the IDF was like, oh yeah, sure, go ahead. Yeah, well, you're on a terrorist list, but go ahead, go in, come out. There's 0% chance of that, none. Oh, the militants were around and we were so worried about our lives, that's why we had to murder them. I mean, kill them, I mean, execute them. I mean, oh my God, we were so worried. Then the Washington Post looks at all the drone footage. There's no militants around anywhere. There's no fighting around anywhere. There's no military planes or anything else around at all. Lie after lie after lie. So now, why are they doing this? Well, they've killed now over 90 journalists, more than any conflict in decades. So, we talk about how sometimes the Russian government, both tragically and their explanations are hilarious, but you kill journalists that say things against Putin, and it's heart-wrenching and disgusting in so many ways. But they'll say like, oh, they tripped and fell out a window and stuff, and we know that it's perilous being a brave, honest journalist in Russia. Well, Israel has killed a lot more journalists than the Russians have, than literally anyone has. And they keep saying, oh, oops, it was yet another accident. Shireen Abu Akleh assassinated. And even the American government seems to acknowledge, of course, they'd never do anything about it. There's no sanctions, they would continue to give them money, etc. But shot in the neck by a sniper, murdered. No other fighting around. As usual, the IDF lies were completely exposed. None of it was true. They assassinated her. And so they don't want any drones in the sky. Now you might say, oh, well, they're worried about military, etc. Well, why was this, again, was this drone shown to have any weapons or be anywhere near a conflict? No, because they don't want people seeing how badly they've slaughtered the Gazans and how destroyed Gaza is. So if you had killed 31,000 people, 25,000 women and children, would you want the whole world to see their bodies? No, of course you wouldn't want that. And you know what happened after they, in my opinion, executed these journalists? And look, you see the evidence here. You can call it any word you like. Killed, murdered, executed. I guess if you're like deluded Israeli supporter, oops, they did it. They accidentally killed more and more and more and more journalists. Golly gee, they're just the most incompetent military in the world. Okay, you call it anything you like. But guess what happened? Journalists stopped using drones. Mission accomplished. That's what the IDF wanted. They wanted to shut off images of their brutality and their war crimes, and they shut them off. And then more and more journalists obviously started leaving the Gaza Strip because they were targets. The IDF, I mean, how many times do they have to execute journalists before you begin to realize they don't want journalists in Gaza Strip to see and document their crimes? And that is what it is in Gaza, war crimes. And yes, executing journalists is also a war crime and is also not what a democracy does or what an ally of America is supposed to do. But of course, the response from the Republicans and the Democrats will be like, no, I'm gonna give them more money. No, I'm gonna give them more money. Oh, they executed journalists? Send them 14 billion, 17 billion. Mike Johnson today saying that he wants to invite Netanyahu to speak and address Congress. So there's no accountability for IDF's war crimes. And then sometimes people ask me, hey, why don't you go to Israel and check out what's happening? Are you insane? I would not like to be murdered. And I don't know if I would be killed in Israel proper, but there's some chance. If I was in the Gaza Strip, a Muslim journalist in the Gaza Strip, no, I would not like the world's, one of the most despotic governments, the one that has literally targeted and murdered journalists more than any other country, to take a pot shot at me and execute me there. So no, I will never be going there until they end this war and the occupation, and they stop murdering journalists.
Yeah, your point about the impact of targeting journalists. I mean, I've lost track of how many they've killed or harmed or killed the families of. It is, for the people who are lucky to survive, a threat. And thankfully, there are still journalists in the Gaza Strip who are not intimidated by it, but maybe also know their days are numbered. And for the others, it's, yeah, you want to show the world what we're doing? Okay, we'll do it to you next. I mean, what were these four doing other than documenting what the IDF had done to children, to families under the rubble? These atrocities, they're broadcasting, they're doing their due diligence as a reporter to broadcast this to the world, to show the world this is the reality. Because especially early on, it was, oh, we're being very cautious. You saw IDF spokespeople on every major cable news network here in the West. Oh, we're being extremely cautious. We're definitely not killing any civilians, even when they bombed refugee camps and just cratered entire buildings. It was, well, we told everyone to get out. We were very cautious. And you just see the footage, and there's this moment of cognitive dissonance for any rational person. This isn't true. But then you see this propaganda to justify it. And there's always an element of it in English. It's because they want this for Western audiences. They want people to see an English anatomy textbook with, oh, we love Hamas inside, or Mein Kampf with English text. Who is that for? Who in Gaza Strip is reading in English? And it's only because these types of these pieces of propaganda are placed because they want to disseminate them in Western media, because most reporters will just take it and run with it. Most people will believe it. And it's not until months later, like we're seeing in this case, will somebody actually fact check. And unfortunately, by that time, it's tough to build momentum to demand change. Thankfully, people who watch this, I know, are still motivated by it. But it does seem like as the war has gone on, fewer and fewer people are taking action. Fewer people are writing their member of Congress. Fewer people are showing up to protest. Fewer people are doing things that would continue to hold the Biden administration's feet to the fire on things like weapons sales, on things like supporting the IDF. So this is all a delay tactic, and it's unfortunately a masterful one, because for you to go back and think about how mad you were in January when you first heard about this story, for a lot of people, it's a challenge. Thankfully, I think TYT viewers are still upset, but for the mass majority of people, they've moved on to other things.
Yeah, I'm going to end on a couple of things here. One, I want to give you an exact quote from the Washington Post. 90 journalists and other media workers in Gaza have been killed in just over 5 months, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. The deadliest period for the profession since the group began collecting data in 1992. So some people will say, don't report on Israel's war crimes. It offends us. Well, then Israel committing the war crimes and murdering all those journalists should offend you 10,000 times more. I'll give the last word to our members. Genocide Joe wrote in, I wish I had the guts that journalists in Gaza do. Their bravery is other level. And it's true, those are the bravest people on earth. And finally, Bloated Ego said, if our government is not willing to use the enormous leverage we have in the unfettered military aid to Israel, I don't want to hear anything Biden and or Blinken has to say about the war in Gaza. Yes, if you're not using your leverage and you're giving them blank checks, then our government is helping to kill those journalists, and that disgusts me. Guys, we've got a bonus episode coming up for the members. Hit the join button below or go to tyt.com/join to get that. And we're going to also talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene and how she's bragging about bringing home the bacon on bills she voted against. Of course. We'll see you there in a minute.